Welcome to Creative Movies Recapped. Today's recap is a 2018 action thriller titled The Commuter. Watch out for spoilers ahead. Before we continue, kindly subscribe and help our channel grow. Michael is a former police detective who now works as an insurance salesman. He's a caring family man living with his wife Karen and teenage son Danny. He takes the same commuter train to work and back home every day for the past 10 years until one day he's suddenly fired. Stressed on how to afford his son's college tuition and pay for his mortgage, he confides in Detective Murphy, his former partner in the police force, intending to hide the fact that he's been fired from Karen. A former colleague, David Hawthorne, works in the bar and is now a captain in the police force. He walks towards Murphy and Michael for a brief chat, but Murphy appears not to like him. Later on the train ride home, Michael loses his phone on the station, however proceeds to sit. Moments later, a mysterious woman joins him and introduces herself as Joanna. She further adds that she's married and studies human behavior. After a brief and friendly chat, Joanna creates a hypothetical situation and tells Michael it's meant for an experiment. She offers Michael $25,000 hidden in the bathroom carriage, and in exchange he has to find a passenger on the train carrying a bag and goes by the name Prin. Before departing, Joanna adds that the passenger will be on the train until the last stop at Cold Spring and offers him another $75,000 after the mission is complete. She further hints that she knows Michael is an ex-police officer. Michael proceeds to the bathroom and finds the hidden cash. He discovers the hypothetical situation may actually be real and begins looking for the passenger as instructed. The train arrives at the next station and a young woman gives Michael an envelope saying it's a warning and he's been monitored. The young woman then leaves the train. He opens the envelope and finds Karen's wedding ring. Terrified, he borrows a phone from Tony, a regular passenger in the train, and tries to call Karen but is unable to reach her. He then contacts Murphy and fails to reach him as well but leaves him a voicemail. Michael leaves a message on a piece of newspaper for Walt to call the police, informing him that his family is in danger. Meanwhile, a passenger seated behind appears to throw glances at Michael. Moments later, Joanna calls Michael, informing him about the consequences for breaking the rules as she had instructed Michael to keep it a secret. She directs his attention to the window and Michael witnesses as Walt is pushed towards an incoming vehicle, leading to his demise. Michael is forced to cooperate when Joanna threatens to hurt Karen and Danny. She instructs him to get a GPS tracker from his jacket and plant the device on the bag once he finds it to complete the mission. Michael begins searching for Prin while looking out for any suspicious passenger with a bag. He takes note of the zone stubs on the passenger seat, marking those alighting at Cold Spring. He then interacts with some passengers and just then spots a young man carrying a bag and talking on the phone. Michael goes after him and the man begins attacking Michael for following him. Michael mentions Prin and the guy acts suspicious, asking Michael what he knows. The two continue fighting and in the process, Michael secretly slips the tracker on his bag. He tells Michael to let it go and eventually walks away after drawing the attention of the passengers sitting nearby. Moments later, Michael receives a phone call from Murphy and explains the whole situation to Murphy. Murphy remarks that a witness using the name Prin claims to have seen two men pushing Enrique, a government employee, from a building window to his demise. The phone call then disconnects. Michael figures out that someone is after the witness's life and he just helped the assassin identify the witness as a setup. He's now concerned and goes looking for Prin but finds the bag instead. Michael opens the bag but doesn't find anything suspicious. He then hears a phone ringing under the train only to find the guy's body stuffed underneath the carriage with a gunshot to his head. He finds an FBI badge and discovers the passenger is only a federal agent and not the mysterious Prin. Michael receives a phone call from Joanna blaming him for marking the wrong person, causing his death. Joanna informs Michael that a passenger reported his suspicious activities in the train and the police are on lookout for him. Michael manages to hide next to the guy's body but gets locked underneath when the police on patrol steps on the handle. He struggles to slip off the train, which then begins moving. Michael rolls off from underneath and runs back in the train, but his bag gets stuck, eventually losing the $25,000 while trying to pull the bag. With only 2 more steps left to reach Cold Spring, he deliberately damages the air conditioning, forcing the remaining passengers to move to the last carriage where the AC still works. He explains the same hypothetical situation to Tony and inquires whether he would accept $100,000 to identify a mysterious passenger on the train, after which the passenger will be eliminated. Tony asks Michael what he will do in such a situation, and Michael calls out 5 people he would suspect to be the mysterious passenger, based on the fact that he has never seen them on the train before. Michael follows a guitar man, Oliver, to the next carriage, and after interrogating him, he reveals that he was assigned to end Prince's life after Michael identifies him. Oliver threatens Michael at gunpoint to reveal Prince among the 4 passengers left. He then reveals that he shot the FBI agent and was promised the same reward of $100,000 after completing the task. Michael tries to persuade him not to push forward with the plan, but Oliver refuses. And during a standoff between the two, Michael stabs and pushes Oliver out of the moving train. Michael receives a call from Joanna informing him he is out of time and instructs him to take the gun instead and end Prince's life to protect his own family. Michael is now desperate after discovering that neither of the 5 passengers he suspected before are Prince, despite the fact that all of them are heading to Cold Spring. He ends up threatening the rest of the passengers at gunpoint. Michael then recalls a young girl going to Cold Spring but switched her seat with another passenger who alighted at a different station. The young girl turns out to be Prince and her real name is Sophia. Joanna calls furious, demanding Michael to choose over his family's life over Prince, but Michael is reluctant on doing it. Joanna explains that Prince holds the evidence against a powerful organization involved in the death of Enrique and will stop at nothing to protect themselves. Joanna declares that everyone dies and ends the call. Michael orders Sam, one of the conductors, to stop the train, but the train fails to stop because the engineer is dead and the brakes are malfunctioning. With the train now set to crash, they decide to unhook the last carriage with the passengers from the rest of the train. Sam remains behind in the train that eventually crashes while Michael manages to jump onto the other carriage. The carriage eventually halts in a train yard. Michael calms everyone down and instructs them to cover the windows with a wet newspaper as someone is watching them and they are all in danger. He asks Sophia about the evidence that she has, and Michael discovers that Enrique was a city planner and he held a device that contained confidential information, and if the information gets out, a lot of powerful people will have a lot to lose. Enrique was Sophia's cousin and 2 men showed up asking for the device, but Enrique refused to give it to them. Sophia witnessed while hiding as the 2 men pushed Enrique out of the window. She explains that she had been instructed by a friend to go to Cold Spring and meet Agent Garcia, an FBI, who would then escort her to witness protection to enable her to testify against the organization. Sophia mentions she could not report the incident to the police as the killers were cops. Just then, the police suddenly arrive, convinced that Michael has held the passengers hostage. Captain Hawthorne sends Murphy over to negotiate with Michael and get him to release the hostages. Michael agrees to let some passengers out, leaving the rest inside, and allows Murphy in the train. Murphy tries to persuade Michael to give him the evidence and the witness, assuring him that his family will not get hurt. He then mentions the phrase, "There is no such thing as noble." Michael recalls Joanna using the same phrase. Enrique's terminators used the phrase before pushing him off the building as mentioned by Sophia earlier on. Michael figures out that Murphy was among the cops involved in Enrique's death, and Murphy set him up to do away with the witness. Murphy eventually admits his involvement at gunpoint. He forces Michael to hand him the gun, threatening to harm his family. Murphy turns the gun towards Michael, stating that he has a family to protect as well. Murphy inquires from Michael which passenger is Prince, but Michael refuses to talk. Sophia eventually reveals herself, but the rest of the passengers also admit to be the real Prince, confusing Murphy. Michael and Murphy have a standoff and Michael manages to grab Murphy's electronic tracker, which is enabling the police identify Murphy from Michael. The police mistaken Murphy to be Michael and Captain Hawthorne orders the snipers to take a shot, eventually shooting Murphy. Sophia meets Agent Garcia and explains everything she knows. The agent assures Michael that his family is safe as 3 men were arrested outside their home. Michael is considered a hero by the rest of the passengers. He reunites with Karen and Danny outside. He then talks to Captain Hawthorne, who tells him that there's been an ongoing investigation into Murphy and other corrupt officers in the department, including Murphy's accomplice Joanna. Captain Hawthorne then offers Michael his old job as a detective. Sometime later, Michael is back on the train and manages to find Joanna, who tries to deny having met Michael before. Michael makes it clear that he is aware of Joanna's whole scheme and then shows her his detective's badge, leaving Joanna looking slightly uneasy. That's it for today's recap. Consider subscribing to stay tuned for more movie recaps.